What happens when one of comedy's most fearless satirists sits across from a talk show host who's built his career on safe, predictable jokes? What happens when that same satirist decides he's had enough of watching mediocrity get rewarded, while real comedy gets sanitized? Tonight, we're diving into the most uncomfortable 12 minutes of television you've probably never seen, where Sacha Baron Cohen absolutely dismantled Jimmy Kimmel on his own show. This wasn't your typical promotional interview. This was a masterclass in how to expose someone's complete lack of authenticity on live television. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because what you're about to witness will change how you see late-night television forever. The setup seemed innocent enough. Sacha Baron Cohen was scheduled to appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote his latest project. What the producers thought would be another softball interview filled with rehearsed anecdotes and clips. But from the moment Cohen walked onto that stage, something felt different. His usual theatrical energy was replaced by something sharper, more focused. Kimmel, oblivious to what was coming, launched into his typical opening routine. So Sacha, you've made a career out of tricking people, getting them to reveal their true selves when they think nobody's watching. Must be quite the rush, Kimmel said with that practiced smile that's carried him through thousands of these interviews. Cohen leaned back in his chair, studying Kimmel with an intensity that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably. Actually, Jimmy, I think you've got it backwards. The real trick isn't getting people to reveal themselves when they think nobody's watching. The real trick is getting them to hide who they really are when everyone is watching. The audience laughed, assuming this was banter, but Kimmel's smile faltered for just a split second. He recovered quickly, trying to steer the conversation back to familiar territory. Well, your characters certainly know how to push buttons. Borat, Ali G, they're all about finding that line and then crossing it. Speaking of crossing lines, Cohen interrupted, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone lean forward. I've been watching your show for years, Jimmy. Really watching it. And I have to ask, when did you decide that being safe was more important than being honest? The studio fell silent. This wasn't in the script. Kimmel's writers hadn't prepared him for this. The host tried to laugh it off, but his discomfort was visible. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Sacha. We tackle tough subjects all the time. Cohen's eyes never left Kimmel's face. Do you, though? Because from where I sit, it looks like you've perfected the art of saying absolutely nothing while pretending to say something important. Take your political segments, for instance. You'll spend 5 minutes making fun of a politician's appearance or their latest gaffe, but you never actually challenge the systems that put them there. You're like a comedian who's forgotten what comedy is actually for. The audience was dead. Quiet now. This wasn't the playful roasting they'd expected. This was something else entirely. Kimmel's hands fidgeted with his note cards, his usual confidence evaporating under Cohen's unwavering stare. Look, Sacha, I think you might be taking this a bit too seriously, Kimmel tried, forcing another laugh. We're just here to entertain people, help them forget about their problems for a while. Help them forget, Cohen repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. That's interesting, because I always thought comedy was supposed to help people remember. Remember what's important. Remember what's wrong with the world. Remember that they have power to change things. But your version of comedy, it's like intellectual anesthesia. It numbs people just enough so they don't feel the pain, but not enough to actually do anything about what's causing it. Kimmel was visibly struggling now. His media training had prepared him for difficult guests, but not for this kind of philosophical assassination. I think you're being a little unfair here. We donate to charities, we raise awareness for causes. Cohen leaned forward, and the camera caught every detail of his expression. Awareness. That's the word people use when they want to feel like they're helping without actually having to sacrifice anything. You raise awareness the same way a street corner evangelist raises awareness about salvation. You make a lot of noise, you feel good about yourself, but at the end of the day, nothing fundamentally changes. The host was sweating now, small beads forming on his forehead under the studio lights. Okay, I'm starting to feel like this is more of an attack than an interview. Is it an attack to ask someone to justify their choices? Cohen shot back without missing a beat. Is it an attack to wonder why someone with your platform chooses to use it for corporate-sponsored mediocrity, instead of actually challenging people to think? You have millions of viewers every night, Jimmy. Millions of people who trust you to tell them what's worth paying attention to. And what do you give them? Celebrity gossip, shallow political jokes that make everyone feel superior, without actually changing anything, and advertisements disguised as entertainment. The camera operator was having a field day, cutting between Cohen's intense stare and Kimmel's increasingly desperate attempts to regain control of his own show. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether they were witnessing television history or a career-ending meltdown. Kimmel tried one more time to deflect. You know, this is pretty rich coming from someone who's made millions pretending to be other people. At least I'm honest about who I am. That's when Cohen smiled, and everyone in that studio knew that Kimmel had just walked into a trap. That smile was predatory, calculated, the smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Cohen's voice dropped to almost a whisper, forcing everyone to strain to hear him. Honest about who you are, Jimmy, that's the most fascinating thing you've said all night. Because I've done my homework on you. I know about the man behind the curtain. Kimmel's face went pale. Whatever Cohen was about to say, he knew it wasn't going to be good. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that everything about your public persona is carefully constructed corporate theater. You want to talk about honesty? Let's talk about how you got this job. Let's talk about the deals you made, the compromises you accepted, the soul you sold piece by piece until there was nothing left but a smile and a willingness to say whatever keeps the checks coming. The studio audience was completely captivated now. This wasn't just uncomfortable television. This was a public execution, disguised as an interview. Kimmel tried to interrupt, but Cohen wasn't finished. Do you remember when you started in comedy, Jimmy? Do you remember what it felt like to actually have something to say? Because I've watched your old material, back when you were hungry. Back when you actually took risks. You were a different person then. You had edges. You had opinions that weren't focus group tested. What happened to that person? Kimmel's voice cracked slightly as he responded. People change, Sacha. That's called growing up. Growing up, Cohen repeated with disgust. Is that what you call it when you trade your integrity for a prime-time slot? Is that what you call it when you turn your show into a corporate mouthpiece that pretends to have opinions while never actually offending anyone who matters? You didn't grow up, Jimmy. You gave up. The camera caught every micro-expression on Kimmel's face as he struggled to maintain his composure. His usual quick wit had abandoned him completely. Look, I have responsibilities. I have a staff. I have a family to support. And there it is, Cohen said triumphantly. The excuse every sellout uses. Responsibilities. Let me ask you something. What about your responsibility to your audience? What about your responsibility to use your influence for something more meaningful than selling them products and keeping them complacent? You hide behind your staff and your family, but the truth is, you're just scared. Scared of taking a real stand, scared of losing your comfortable position, scared of finding out what happens when you actually challenge power instead of just making fun of it. Kimmel was spiraling now, his media training completely failing him in the face of Cohen's relentless assault. This is really unfair, Sacha. You don't know what it's like to be in my position. Your position, Cohen laughed bitterly. You mean The position of being handed millions of dollars to keep people distracted while the world burns around them. You're right. I don't know what that's like, because I chose a different path. I chose to use comedy as a weapon instead of a sedative. The host made one last desperate attempt to regain control. At least my comedy doesn't rely on humiliating innocent people for cheap laughs. Cohen's eyes flashed dangerously. Innocent people? Jimmy, the people I expose are never innocent. They're racists, homophobes, corrupt politicians, greedy executives. I hold up a mirror to society's ugliest impulses and force people to confront them. What do? You pat everyone on the head and tell them they're good people for laughing at safe, toothless jokes that threaten absolutely no one. The audience was transfixed. Some were shifting in their seats, others were leaning forward, but no one was looking away. This was television they'd never seen before, raw and unfiltered, in a way that late-night TV never allowed. You want to know the difference between us? Cohen continued, his voice gaining momentum. When I make someone uncomfortable, it's because I'm exposing something true about them, something they don't want the world to see. When you make people comfortable, it's because you're helping them avoid those same truths. You're an enabler. Jimmy, you enable complacency. You enable ignorance. You enable the kind of willful blindness that lets terrible things happen while everyone's too entertained to notice. Kimmel was completely defeated now, his usual showmanship replaced by genuine distress. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? Cohen leaned back in his chair, studying Kimmel like a scientist examining a specimen. I want you to admit what you are. I want you to stop pretending that what you do has any value beyond keeping people sedated. I want you to acknowledge that you've turned comedy into a tool of oppression instead of liberation. That's not fair, Kimmel protested weakly. Comedy doesn't have to be political. It can just be funny. Nothing is just funny, Jimmy. Every joke makes a choice about what deserves ridicule and what deserves protection. Every laugh either challenges power or reinforces it. And you've spent your entire career making sure your jokes never challenge anything that matters. You punch down at easy targets while kissing up to the people who actually shape the world. The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras whirring. Even the production crew had stopped their usual bustling to watch this unprecedented dismantling of their boss. Kimmel looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would rescue him from this nightmare. The tragedy, Cohen said softly, is that you actually had talent once. You could have been something important. Instead, you chose to be a highly paid court jester, entertaining the masses while the kingdom burns around them. And the worst part, you've convinced yourself that this makes you a good person. Kimmel's voice was barely audible when he finally spoke. What would you have me do? Throw away everything I've built? Cohen's smile returned, cold and calculating. I'd have... You remember what you built it on. The silence that followed was deafening. Kimmel sat there, stripped of his usual bravado, looking like a man who had just been forced to confront every compromise he'd ever made. But Cohen wasn't finished. He had saved his most devastating observation. For last, you know what the real tragedy is, Jimmy. It's not that you sold out. Lots of people sell out. The real tragedy is that you sold out so cheaply. You traded your authenticity for a job that any reasonably charismatic person could do. You became replaceable by design. Kimmel flinched as if he had been physically struck. That's not true. Isn't it? Cohen pressed. Tell me, what would happen if you disappeared tomorrow? Would anything fundamental change about late-night television? Would your show suddenly become honest or challenging or meaningful? Of course not. They'd just find another handsome face willing to smile on cue and read the jokes someone else wrote. You've made yourself into a commodity, Jimmy. A perfectly interchangeable product. The host's hands were shaking now. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. And I know you're not used to that, but try to stay with me. Cohen's voice carried no sympathy, only cold analysis. You want to know what real cruelty looks like? Real. Cruelty is having the platform to make a difference and choosing not to use it. Real cruelty is keeping people ignorant and calling it entertainment. Real cruelty is building a career on the intellectual laziness of your audience. Kimmel made one final attempt to fight back. At least I don't hide behind characters. At least I'm not afraid to be myself. Cohen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yourself? Jimmy, you haven't been yourself in so long. I don't think you remember what that looks like. You've been playing a character for years. The character of a man who cares about something other than ratings and advertising revenue. The difference is, my characters are honest about being performances. Your character pretends to be real. The camera captured every detail of Kimmel's face as the words hit home. His practiced smile was completely gone now, replaced by something raw and desperate. Why are you doing this to me? Because someone has to, Cohen replied simply. Because in a world full of people willing to tell you what you want to hear, someone has to tell you what you need to hear. You've surrounded yourself with people who depend on you for their paychecks, people who will never challenge you because they can't afford to. But I don't need anything from you, Jimmy. I don't need your approval. I don't need your friendship, and I certainly don't need your platform. That makes me dangerous to you, doesn't it? Kimmel looked around the studio desperately, as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. This interview is over. No, it's not, Cohen said calmly, because you're not brave enough to walk away. You're going to sit there and take this, because deep down, you know I'm right. You know that everything I've said is true, and you're hoping that if you just endure it long enough, you can go back to pretending it never happened. The accuracy of this prediction was written all over Kimmel's face. He remained in his chair, paralyzed by the truth of Cohen's words. Here's what's going to happen, Cohen continued, his voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. You're going to finish this interview. You're going to smile and shake my hand and pretend this was all just good television. Then you're going to go back to your dressing room and look at yourself in the mirror. And for just a moment, you're going to see what I see. You're going to see a man who traded his soul for a television contract. Kimmel's voice was barely a whisper. You don't understand the pressures I'm under. I understand perfectly, Cohen replied. The pressure to be mediocre. The pressure to avoid saying anything that might upset advertisers or network executives. The pressure to keep people comfortable while they're being robbed blind by the very system you're helping to protect. Yes, Jimmy. I understand those pressures. I just chose not to give in to them. The host looked completely broken now, his usual confidence shattered beyond repair. What do you want me to say? I want you to say nothing, Cohen answered. Because anything you say right now will just be another performance. Another carefully calculated response designed to minimize damage rather than confront truth. You've been performing for so long that I don't think you're capable of genuine response anymore. The studio audience watched in stunned silence as their host was systematically destroyed by his own guest. This wasn't entertainment anymore, this was witnessing a public reckoning. The saddest part, Cohen said, his voice softening slightly, is that you could have been great. You had the talent, you had the opportunity, you had the platform. But you chose safety over significance, comfort over courage. And now you're trapped in a prison of your own making, pretending to be happy while your soul slowly dies. Kimmel's eyes were wet now, though whether from anger or humiliation or genuine emotion was impossible to tell. I help people. I make them laugh. You help them avoid thinking, Cohen corrected. You make them laugh at things that don't matter while the things that do matter destroy them. You're not a comedian, Jimmy. You're a drug dealer, and your drug is willful ignorance. The final blow came quietly, almost gently. But the worst part isn't what you've done to your audience. The worst part is what you've done to yourself. You've convinced yourself that this is who you always were, that this is who you're meant to be. But I remember the young comedian who wanted to change the world. He's still in there somewhere, isn't he? Buried under years of compromise and rationalization, but still there. And every night, when the cameras stop rolling and the audience goes home, he reminds you of what you could have been. Kimmel sat in complete silence, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to do anything but absorb the devastating accuracy of Cohen's words. Cohen stood up, straightened his jacket, and extended his hand. "Thank you for having me on your show, Jimmy. It's been enlightening." And that was it. The most brutal takedown in television history, delivered with surgical precision by a man who understood exactly what he was doing. As the credits rolled, viewers were left with one unforgettable image: Jimmy Kimmel, sitting alone in his chair, finally forced to confront the man he had become. What did you think of this absolutely savage destruction of everything Jimmy Kimmel represents? Drop a comment below and let me know if you think Cohen went too far, or if someone needed to finally call out the fake authenticity that dominates late-night television. And make sure to subscribe, because we're just getting started with these deep dives into the moments when celebrities accidentally revealed their true selves.